lastly, tying Intune back to service management portal. So I know we got maybe a little smaller audience in some of the past sessions. So feel free, raise your hand if you want during the session, throw in meeting chat. I'm just putting it up on my other screen here. So by all means, happy to take questions as we go through. Feel free and interrupt. Otherwise, near the end, we can always take some more questions as well. And per Julietta, we are turning on recording. So kicking things off a little bit, in terms of just overall top trends that that Microsoft, that Microserve is seeing, as well as whether it's Gartner or Forrester, all that kind of stuff. Changing the slides from is hybrid here to stay. The reality is yes. It's here. It's all around us all the time. Just about every organization I've talked to in the past year has adopted some kind of hybrid work strategy, whether in some cases they want to or not. It's been the reality of where we've headed. Of course, this bleeds into ongoing and more security threats plaguing our organizations, or in many cases trying to target the fact that there's more work from home than ever before. And really what we're seeing combined with those top two is really a focus for a lot of organizations around transformation towards cloud type solutions. So often early in the pandemic, it was just more, how do we just react to it? Knee-jerk reaction using the tools that we already had. Now we're seeing a lot more activity towards how do we actually modernize? How do we transform our environments? So today, this is really more transformation as it relates to endpoint management, if you will, and what Surface brings about with that. And in my opinion, what this all ties back to is how important technology experiences are for hybrid work environments, given the security problems and some of the challenges we're seeing. And I pulled a few stats here around Forrester's future of work strategy or survey. Way too many people are calling in for end user support. We even see it in our managed services side within the help desk. And a lot of our goals and initiatives are around how do we train users better? How do we enable them to use the tools that they might already have at their disposal and not even know it? If we can reduce calls, it's not only more efficient from a support perspective, but it also makes those users a lot more productive. So a lot of organizations, this is becoming a demand from the business and the business driving it back towards IT teams. So, today, hopefully, maybe you get a couple of tips in terms of where we see the market headed and where we're helping a lot of clients kind of take steps down this journey. So, right now, given those trends and what we're seeing, it really is kind of a critical time, in my opinion. Whether it's big meetings, smaller meetings, employees really need to be seen and heard, and more importantly, understood, regardless of where they are. Past few sessions I've done for webinar events, I've actually gone to the Microserve office, had a big setup there to facilitate it. Today's a great example. You know what? I'll admit, I was at the Red Hot Chili Peppers concert late last night and didn't want to make the time to get to the office first thing and prep. So, today, hopefully you all can see and hear me well, thanks to the technology that we provide to our end users inside of Microserve is a really good example. As we think towards Surface, given the Microsoft's been to this session, as you get into their new fleet lineup, I do have, of course, background blur. I've got the Surface Pro 9. With that one, for example, the camera technology in it, you even look good while you're in the meetings that you're in. So trying to evolve from just, hey, that little webcam that came in your standard laptop to technology that's better empowering, more enabling, giving a better experience where I can do a webinar from home or I can do it from the office with higher end boardroom technology or anything in between. So, organizations that do invest into a modern device strategy, in my opinion, really help meet the challenges and the trends that we saw, end up with a better advantage. Whether it's business oriented or as we get into public sector and higher education, for example, just an advantage in terms of how they operate and how productive end users are. Modern devices end up creating a better, more efficient modern workplace experience, and really makes people excited to use the technology they have. I know for me, when I'm on the road, I'm on a big workstation right now, but this is my device of choice. I don't even bring a laptop bag anymore. I get to carry this like a notebook. Trying to provide technology that empowers users, that gives them the right experience. But even if I'm on the road and take a meeting, whether I'm in my car or sitting in a coffee shop, having the technology that goes with it that enhances the experience for the other recipients of watching my video stream or wherever we are, for example. What we are seeing, though, by having modern device strategy, by introducing technology into the environment that really reduces friction and workflows for end users, they're less frustrated. They've got a device that works. They're, ending up being happier with the technology the organization is giving, potentially avoiding, the loss of talent leaving your organization, for example. I know inside of Microsoft, we've certainly seen that, and the feedback as we give surveys to end users across our managed clients, for example, the more we can bring about the right technology from an endpoint standpoint, the devices that are in everybody's hands, the better experience they have and the more productive users can become. So, of course, we're here today, sponsored by Microsoft on Surface Modern. So I've got to talk about some of what goes into the technology here. And the word that always comes to mind is premium or premium design, whatever flavor you want to call it. I was fortunate enough to get sent my first Surface maybe 6 months before the pandemic hit, and it became my only device for the last 3 years, essentially, that I used every day in, day out for meetings. It was the first time in my history that I found that on a mobile device, on a laptop, that I had no need to plug in external webcams, a better microphone, so that I could be seen and heard in meetings. So that's really where I started to buy into the technology behind it, more than just marketing on a slide, for example, was when you actually start experiencing it, when no matter where I am in the house or if there's kids playing behind me, hiding those out, not letting anybody know it, and having quality audio built natively into the device. So, when it comes to collaboration, though, I also, so extending that from audio, camera technology, and quality, my big one was even using the device in a way that's more tactile or friendly. So if I'm editing a document, whether it's a proposal to a customer or whatever else, I often take the device, put it into portrait mode, and Surface's pen is the one that actually feels the closest to pen on paper. They've actually really put a lot of R&D behind that technology that goes into the device to give a tactile feel that when you're writing on it or marking up a Word document on your laptop, it's the same size as a sheet of paper, and it gives that sensation that a lot similar to the paper feel that allow people to transition to actually using the pen and the tablet component of a device, in which case I've seen so many other devices. Nobody ever uses the touchscreen out of tapping something on the screen faster. So that's certainly what I found. But the audio quality that comes back to the collaboration experience is incredibly important. That helps do it. So if I kind of summarize how Surface drives value into this picture, is it the only solution? No, we support all the tier 1 vendors and more, all of which have phenomenal devices. From what we have seen, though, is that value message that Surface can really help with productivity, the piece I'm going to focus on today, between simpler IT process and security, as well as accessibility and sustainability design. So making sure we have confidence in terms of products that we're providing to end users and that they are as sustainable as possible. So common slide, not that I'm here to fearmonger today or dive deep into the security topic, but security is a really big deal, more than ever before. So how we think of endpoint management, if I relate it really back to the focus today of thinking about modern device strategy, yes, these are statistics. We've all seen them. We see the papers. We see the news articles about who got breached. This week it was OpenAI that had their first breach. So this just keeps going and going. So when we think about modern devices, the concept that Microsoft started talking about with Surface, and now we're seeing this blend into the other OEMs, is that term chip to cloud security. So the hardware that we run on through the operating system, the apps we have, tying back to user identities, all the way to the cloud environments that most organizations are transforming at least partially into, providing the device technology that blends into that landscape. As it relates to Surface, the big focus is when you get into the firmware component. Hardware just about every other OEM is doing TPM 2.0, supporting Windows Hello, BitLocker, for example. The unique elements that I will touch on a little bit more towards the end of the deck today is the fact that integrated into Intune, I have a portal that lets me manage this. I can control the bias settings native in a UI that makes it incredibly easy to decide that, this team, when they go to one client with highly confidential information, I've got to make sure policy driven that their cameras are always turned off, for example. Well, I could do that essentially in a matter of minutes. So having tie-ins to the hardware that are native and integrated into the product makes a really big difference. Same thing, I'm not going to read you the OS and cloud. To me, those are applicable to just about, the fact that we're moving towards Windows 11 and the M365 suite that helps support the security elements here. So as I mentioned, it's not just all the OEMs now. As we head towards Windows 11, this became one of the biggest focuses to it. It's not just a UI enhancement, and it's not just about the taskbar having the start menu in the middle of the screen as opposed to the bottom left like it's been for the last 20 years. It ties back on that theme of secured core PCs, tying the security into hardware. You can see that list of all the different OEMs that support it. So Microsoft Surface started this game and have really been the industry leader to prove it out. And now you see the number of OEMs that are also contributing towards this model. So for those organizations that aren't looking at piloting it, this is a year I'm seeing a whole lot of Windows 11 pilot and even early adoption. I'd highly recommend it if you haven't gone down that path yet. This really helps around as we head towards firmware level attacks, some of the things that we're seeing in terms of cybersecurity. Tie your operating system back to the hardware in a secure manner. So switching gears a little bit out of just that high level security element, stuff that got me excited about is, I saw this in October at the Ignite conference, was their new product lines into the Microsoft family. So first one, the Pro 9, that's the one I do happen to have with me today. Major technology enhancements that from minor productivity elements to some of the stuff around graphics and the camera technology they've woven into the hardware that I'll talk about in a second. The irony is I've actually found now, because I do have a Surface Pro 8, which was my primary machine up until last fall when I got the Pro 9. The biggest difference I notice is the fact the screen goes almost all the way to the edges around the bezel. There's almost no bezel on the Surface Pro 9, and I can only see them on the Laptop 5. I haven't got my hands on that one yet. So now I really struggle when I go back to the Surface Pro 8. When my battery dies and I grab the next machine to power up and start my next meeting, I realize, man, I've got an inch of black all the way around that I never noticed up until I was on the newer device. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. Beautiful form factor, minor enhancements and tweaks, a lot behind the scenes in terms of hardware though. I won't dive deep in the other models. Surface Laptop 5, very similar hardware technology woven in. We do have the new Surface Studio available and some cool peripherals that they started coming out with. Now, the one that really got me excited though was something that introduced in the Surface that I haven't seen with any other OEM yet. They call it an NPU. So it's called a neural processing unit. So it's not a GPU, or what we all know as CPU. Essentially, it's a coprocessor dedicated to offloading artificial intelligence for things like automatic framing of your camera. So you're not relying on the camera itself to have AI built into it, but essentially having the ability to do that natively in the hardware and do AI processing. Little things of turning eye contact on or off, being able to actually take on background effects and, if you do the background blur all day long, leveraging hardware-based technology to do that. When you see this work, this was a screenshot from the Ignite session where they demoed this. It's about 100 people in the room. They were demoing these elements as well as some of the audio capabilities behind this. Essentially, you watch, the processor doesn't even move an inch when you turn on some of the feature sets. And if we're all used to Teams, when you turn on background blur, well, that AI processing is computationally intensive. So now, if you've got a bunch of other apps running that you need to screen share in your meeting, you're not affecting performance when you do simple tasks like background blur with high res. or focusing on your voice alone. So it through that hardware is processing to remove all the background noise, no matter where you are. In the event that they actually demoed this, they ended up asking everybody in the audience not to use their voice because it'll detect a voice, but just to make noise, clap, screaming, all sorts of stuff. They had hundreds of people in this room making all this noise, and they flipped that voice focus feature on, and suddenly all the noise got cut out, and the only person you heard was Panos Panay, and I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. Just what they were speaking, that was the only thing recorded in their audio when they played it back. So huge benefits, in my opinion, and really cool to see some of the innovative technology coming to the hardware. So as we switch into the topic of Intune and unified endpoint management technology, so now we get out of the surface-specific stuff of the slide decks. These days, a few years ago, I had a lot harder time convincing people, yes, you should think of endpoint management, go to Microsoft. No, it's not SCCM, which everybody knew. You needed a full-time admin. You needed somebody who really knew what they were doing. Not to say you don't need somebody with Intune specialization now, but the technology is kind of clearly that leader where most conversations I'm having, customers aren't trying to be convinced that it's the right product platform anymore. Now the conversation is, we know this is what we want. Can you help us enable it? We need some help to get this stood up and accelerate our journey to leveraging things like Autopilot, for example. This session, I'm not going to dive deep into Autopilot, but that's where the value really hit for most organizations of changing how we deploy computers to end users. And this theme really hit thanks to all the solutions people had to come up with during COVID at the start of the pandemic. But even now, I know within Microserve, we're provisioning devices for staff members that are joining our team across the country here in Canada, even extending into other countries now. So we need to get a device in hand. We can't just say, hey, come to our office, you'll log in for the first time. Once you've done that, now you can take your machine home and use it from there. So that type of solution just does not work anymore. So if I dive a little bit deeper into product family, it doesn't mean Config Manager has gone away. The key, for those that haven't heard, last year they decided to rebrand yet again. So it went from, Intune was the cloud platform, SCCM or Config Manager was the on-premise platform. Then they called it Microsoft Endpoint Manager. They've reverted all of this suite, now just called Intune. So that's the biggest one there. A little bit of what we're talking about here, I should have updated this. Advanced Endpoint Management out, which is now Intune Plan 2, has some features that I'll touch on in a minute that weave into this suite, but require an additional license component, but definitely worth the consideration as well. Biggest theme I can say though, and operationally, we support this for thousands of devices inside of our managed services team today. I can certainly attest to the fact of what it does in terms of simplifying IT processes, IT operations, end user support, and deployment. It's becoming our gold standard for any client that we want to take on from a managed services where they're outsourcing endpoint management to Microserve. Is that truly, if we get a client modernized into Intune, which is some heavy lifting up front, the value really is there. We're not spending our time figuring out what patch to approve anymore. We're focused on device compliance, device health, the security elements, looking at analytics data to drive user experience and identify a problem Windows driver or an application that's failing too much. That's where we get to spend our time now. We're not spending time on some of the tactical blocking and tackling of building yet another gold image to deploy to a new make and model, for example. Really in summary, I think that the key elements here, you've got to call it cloud powered, even if you're still weaving it into co-management with a config manager server on premise, which in larger enterprise environments might be a piece that still needs to exist for various reasons. But tying it back to being cloud managed, this is what gets us back to that start where we know hybrid's here to stay. Can we provision a device, send it to an end user at home, have them power on, and make sure that device is essentially imaged in the old days, we used to refer to it as imaging, which is essentially all of our policies, all our security settings getting applied to a device. Thanks to enabling cloud-powered management, that's really what gives us that value of being able to do this from anywhere. Not to say you couldn't do it with legacy technology, it was just a lot harder. organizations I saw never went to cloud enabling, Microsoft Config Manager, for example. And I did mention this earlier, where our time goes now is, if you haven't seen it, start looking at in Intune if you're there. If not, happy to do a deep dive. Endpoint analytics, changing what we're focusing on. So how is startup performance across our organization? Are there particular makes and models that are slower than others? How reliable are our apps, and which apps maybe need an update or we need to reach out to the vendor for support for? Thanks to the endpoint analytics component under Intune, this has huge value, again, to focus on that user experience and driving productive users, all of which ends up reducing help desk tickets. So touching on some of what they originally dubbed in October as advanced endpoint management functionality under Intune, there's a few new elements now. Now, essentially, they're calling it Intune Plan 2. Gives us some more advanced features. Probably one of the most secure remote assistance tools that I've seen in the industry right now. You don't need to go to a third party and try and integrate that into Intune or device management. You can end up doing this natively under Intune and provide a remote help experience. I got one slide that'll go a little bit deeper into the steps to give you an idea what that looks like. But mobile apps, having essentially a secure VPN tunnel back into internal published apps that might be not accessible from the outside. One of the big one that there's probably a lot of press, if any of you follow on LinkedIn these days, everybody's creating an article around endpoint privilege management. So one of the problems has always been nobody wants to give out local admin, but there's often a reason or a period of time a user might need it. Well, there's been an array of third-party software that you could look at that would do it, none of which were perfect, and they were all pretty pricey. Now under the new plan, essentially doing privilege management is built into the platform, and we can do it natively and give a phenomenal user experience for as and when those periods of time they need to request elevated access for a particular task. So remote help, I'm not going to walk you through all the steps here. I think the key is when you kind of see the process flow, if you read through those steps, is security is kind of the top of mind, the key element here. The number of times I've heard other third parties, TeamViewer or whatnot, where there's the, oh my God, somebody started remote controlling my machine. I didn't know it was coming. It actually triggers a security incident and a whole investigation process, only to find out the help desk just happened to click on the wrong PC to launch remote control. The way this is controlling authentication, it ties into all of the rest of the identity security that we've invested in to make sure we've got a secure remote help experience that isn't leaving the users worried or scared that they've been breached. So again, the coolest one that's getting a lot of press right now is this whole idea, the fact that if I need to launch an app with admin rights, the request can get sent off to administrators for seamless approval to validate it's a real reason that they need elevated rights, and to give that for a specific period of time. I did not update this slide. It is fully in preview. It's not coming. It's here. Tons of articles are getting published around using this now. So maybe in one of our future sessions, I'll do a deep dive around privilege management. But phenomenal component there to bridge that gap between taking away admin rights or having everybody have admin rights and do it natively within your Microsoft stack. So tying Intune back to Windows 11. To me, there's huge value in this, whether you're talking Win 11 native on the device, like your Surface product or other OEMs, or whether you're tying it into a VDI infrastructure. These days, a lot to do with Azure Virtual Desktop or a cloud PC, if you're going to a Windows 365 cloud PC. All of that under the Windows 11 experience is tailored. Biggest feedback I would share or recommendation I give, don't wait for all your new hardware. Windows 10 and Windows 11 run alongside each other great. I would definitely make sure you're at least piloting Windows 11 in 2023. By 2024, really looking at a larger rollout strategy. But do it on the machines that you can now. Not all of it needs new hardware or waiting for your next refresh. Your last refresh round might have already given you the hardware that you need to achieve Windows 11. Now, before I switch gears and sort of talk about Surface Management Portal under Intune, I thought I'd pause, Anybody have any questions or thoughts? I don't see anything in the meeting chat there, but happy to take a second and pause from everything I've said if there's any comments or questions. Great, then I'll keep moving, but don't be shy. I know we don't have a massive group today, so happy to take some time out and customize what we're talking about. So an interesting element here that really Microsoft has done is blended a dedicated management portal for Surface hardware natively into Intune, which really gives a holistic solution for IT admins to control your devices, to understand where things are at. This is on that same productivity theme around reducing costs, for the organization in terms of support, even some self-service control. But most importantly, making sure that those managed devices that we deploy in our fleet, that we can properly support them once they're deployed into the environment. Give you a quick overview or a sample preview right in the Intune console. Essentially, if you've got Surface device hardware, you've got access to the Surface management portal. This gives us all the high-level stats that you can see here in terms of the Surface fleet, what makes and models that you have. You can run reporting against your fleet. You can look up warranty details, and I think I dive a little bit deeper into that. So you can pull up health, high-level inventory stats on all of your Surface hardware natively in the console. So you're not having to deploy third-party tools to integrate into Intune or other portals that you've got to jump to. Certainly has huge value for the clients that adopt the Surface fleet. The key element here, you're not looking at trying to find a tool to do warranty lookups. All of the data is at your fingertips from support. So device comes in and you know that it's got a failed component to it. You can identify if it's under warranty, whether it's expired, or leverage this data towards your lifecycle refresh planning, for example. Again, in terms of support, that just gives you a view into access for support. My clicker has stopped working here. And yeah, so just kind of a preview on that. There we go. Flip to the next slide. So in summary, I'm maybe moving a little faster than I have in the past today. In terms of hardware models, really I like to think of the portfolio in terms of the different devices we have based on those user personas. My favorite term is thinking about fit for purpose devices, whether it's a Surface or whether it's any other vendor, really looking at targeting what types of user personas do we have in our environment. Are there a field service component? Do we have, customer managers, just straight up information workers, execs, engineers that need particular or specialized device hardware? We should not be deploying the same makes and models to all those organizations. So whether it's Surface product, we can always help you identify what should your standards be or custom tailor what the personas look like. What we usually like to do, if we're running an Intune project, for example, is engineers especially, but every user persona that we get to define with an organization is start to tailor. Engineers maybe they need AutoCAD on their machines. Well, we can help you design a model where if that user's in a persona group that says they're engineers or whatever role they happen to be in marketing, maybe you need specific apps and tools. Not only does that help us define what hardware we might deploy for them if a user request came in for that given department, but we can also mean that when we autopilot and deploy a machine via Intune, they'll also get the customized apps specific to the department or the business unit that they're a part of. So don't just think of personas in terms of the physical hardware. I'd really recommend as you head down the Intune journey, that's where we want to be able to invest our time and our energy is how do we make support for end users easier? How do we make sure that there's not 50 calls to the help desk after we deploy a new machine for a new user, only to find out on day one they don't have the apps they need to do their job. And then request one goes in for AutoCAD. Tomorrow it's a request for Visio or I don't know what. The list kind of goes on. So again, how do we, back to that trend of help desk tickets being on the rise, how do we start minimizing help desk tickets by thinking differently about how we're managing user environments? So with that, in terms of content, last thing I'd really say, all things Surface. Or it's a better together story as we tie this back to the Microsoft 365 suite for all of our clients that are leveraging some or all of M365. Some of what I showed today hopefully kind of illustrates that better together story in terms of designing a device for the ways that we work, providing dedicated hardware that also give us that manageability that we're looking for as IT admins, for example. So at the end of the day, Microserve's here to help. We've got the ability to not only talk about Surface, Intune dialogue, Collab or Teams, meeting spaces, many other areas that we can cover that I'm not addressing today, but really helping partner with each of the customers on the call today or others in terms of helping modernize or better leverage technology with some of the ways that we can address those trends that we talked about at the beginning. So with that, I'll turn it over. I know Julietta commented in the chat if there's any questions or comments. I know I've given you probably a little bit of time back here today. I talked faster than sometimes I do. So hopefully that content was useful, but happy to take any questions or feedback you might have had. Of course, if you don't have any questions, I'll give you a little bit of time back in your day. One thing our marketing team is probably about to post in the chat, these sessions are always tailored for you folks, for our clients. So we have provided a form there in terms of feedback, whether it's to follow up and have a deeper dive conversation, or just even if you found the session valuable. So we'd love your feedback. We want to tailor these and invest time and energy in the things that you folks want to hear about the most. So happy to do that. Feel free and follow the link in the chat there, and incorporate our feedback for future sessions. And I'm happy to stay on the line here and answer anything. Thanks, Simon.